In this video, we will take a look at the relationship between the different variables. Just a reminder that a variable is a letter or symbol that represents an unknown quantity. There are two main types of variables, known as the independent variables and the dependent variables. The independent variable is the variable that does not depend on the other variable to happen. It will happen whether or not the other one happens. The dependent variable is the variable that does depend on the other variable. Let's take a look at that. So, in this statement, it says the more hours Brody practices golf, the better his score will be. So, in this situation, the independent variable is the hours because it doesn't matter whether Brody practices golf or not, the time or the hours are going to continue on. They don't depend on anything else to happen. His score is the dependent variable because the more he practices, his score will go up. So his score depends on the hours that he practices. So write a sentence to explain the independent and dependent variables. Brody's score depends on the hours he practices. The more he practices, the better his score is going to be. Michael pays $8.99 per month for his subscription. The independent variable would be the months, because the months are going to go by whether he has a subscription or not, or whether he pays for his subscription or not. The dependent variable is the total paid. So the more months he has of subscription, the more he's going to spend. So his amount paid depends on the number of months he has a subscription. So there is our sentence. The amount Michael pays depends on the number of months he has his subscription. James runs 3 miles and burns 300 calories. So in this one, the independent variable would be the miles, and the dependent would be the calories burned. Because the more he runs, the more calories he burns. So the number of calories he burns depends on the amount of miles that he runs. So our sentence would be the more calories James burns, depends on the miles ran. So now we've got a little bit different situation here. It says Amy participated in a walkathon to raise money for cancer research. She recorded the total distance she walked at several different points in time. Her times and distances are listed in the table below. So now when we're looking at our table here, the independent variable is the hours or the time walked. Time or hours. And the dependent variable would be the miles that she walked. Because how many miles she walks depends on how long she walks. So that would be our statement here. So amount of miles walked depends on amount of time walked. So when dealing with a table, the independent variable represents the x variable and the dependent variable represents the y variable. Again, the next part of this should be somewhat of a review from discussions we did with ratio tables. So in ratio tables, the x variable is the top row or the left or first column. So in this case, this is our x variable, or this one would be our independent variable. And the independent variable is the time or hours in our table, which we just represented. In ratio tables, the y variable is the bottom row or the second or right column. So in our case here, this would be the y, or this would be the dependent variable. And it says here the dependent variable is the miles walked in the table, which again, we just labeled. So now coordinates, very similar to our discussion again from ratio tables. If I know that this is my x and this is my y, that means my coordinate for the first one, because I write coordinates x comma y with parentheses around it, would be 1 comma 3. The next would be 2 comma 6. The next would be 4 comma 12. And the last one would be 5 comma 15. So the independent variable is the first number or the x coordinate in the ordered pair of coordinates. And the dependent variable is the second number or the y coordinate in the ordered pair of coordinates. So when I write coordinates, it would be parentheses, independent variable, comma, dependent variable. So again, now we're going to look at graphing, and this should be a review from when we graphed ratio tables. So it says the independent variable represents the x-axis. So that would be down here. This is the independent axis. And again, because it's also the x up here, it's the x here. So it's just makes sense that it's the x-axis for the graph as well. And the dependent variable is the y-axis on the coordinate plane. So this side here would be the dependent. And again, looking at our table, this was the y, which is the dependent, and this was the y coordinate, which is also the dependent. So then when I graph this, I would go over 1 and up 3, over 2 and up 6, over 4 and up 12, and over 5 and up 15. Describe the relationship between the two quantities. So again, my first column here is a 1, then I go to a 3. So I'm multiplying by 3. 2 to 6, multiplying by 3. 4 to 12, multiplying by 3. 5 to 15, multiplying by 3. Again, this is a review from making ratio tables. So if I look at the description here, I'm taking my time and I am multiplying it by 3 each time, and that is equaling my miles walked. So when I set this up and look at here, if I know that this is the x and this is the y, and I know that this side is the independent, and I know that this side is the dependent, that means my independent variable multiplied by 3 gives me my dependent variable. Or in this case, by looking here, the x multiplied by 3 gives me my y. So now I'm going to write an algebraic expression to represent the relationship. I'm going to take this right here and I'm going to rewrite it. 3 multiplied by x equals y.